Megan McDermott.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Very good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm a little sick, but I don't feel too bad. I feel a bit nasally. Well, I am a bit nasally. I might cough and sneeze a couple of times in this podcast.
Beautiful.
But all is good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Why are you good?
Had a good day of training today. I've had a good day. Enjoyed the weather outside today, so I'm feeling good.
Nice. Did you get outside?
It did get outside.
Yeah. We had a little stroll. Did you get out again?
No. That was my outside.
That was your outside.
I enjoyed it.
Can I just say it's very weird being on this side. As soon as so for those watching on YouTube, I'm sitting on the opposite side of the table to where I normally sit.
I challenged it.
You did challenge it, and I was like, yeah, why not? I'm not actually attached to that side, but this feels really weird.
Maybe you are.
I also have to look at Al the whole time. And now I'm seeing what our guests have to deal with. They have to look at
do you
him
feel bad?
No, actually, It's quite nice.
Good.
Yeah, it's quite nice. But yeah, it's going to take some getting used to. Anyway, thank you for the challenge. It's good to be on this side of the table.
Amazing.
Meg, this isn't your first time on the podcast.
No.
You were on, what episode was it? Anyhow, you were
a while back.
Post semifinals.
Yes.
You were in South Africa at the time.
Yes.
There was no intention of you being a part of Coastal Fitness or the process programming. That was not something that was on the cards at that point in time. You just, an athlete on the process programming. We had worked together in your preparation for semifinals 2023.
Yeah.
And here you are.
Here I am. That's so wild. That's
what has
crazy.
happened? What has happened with you in that time?
So at that time I was living in South Africa, waiting for my visa to move to Saudi Arabia. So Mark was already in Saudi Arabia, and I was trying to go through the process of getting my visa. And then shortly after, so it was end of August, beginning of September, I then moved to Saudi Arabia to work there as a CrossFit coach and a personal trainer. And then it was around beginning of December, I saw you guys posted an ad that there was a job available. And I didn't even discuss it with Mark. I told Mark I was going to apply for the job. Yeah, it was a no-brainer.
And here you are.
And here I am.
So how long have you been in Hong Kong for now?
Since the end of January. So January 28th, I think it was, that we moved here. So how many months is that?
Okay, I know this is a fairly loaded question, but
yes.
You're kind of like me in a way that we're like expat kids.
Yes.
Right? So kind of
I was about to be like, where are you going with this?
Yeah. How did I get? That was all right.
I was like, oh.
So, I mean, what I mean by that is, Westerners living in a foreign country, growing up in kind of like an international English school system. And then you kind of lived all over the place, and you kind of, now here you are in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Like, how different is Hong Kong to everywhere else that you've lived?
It's extremely different.
Yeah.
However, because it's so different, it kind of feels familiar in that sense. So growing up, I lived in Dubai basically Dubai my entire life. But I was around so many different nationalities. It didn't feel like I was in a very Middle Eastern country. I felt like I was a very international country, or city, I should say, growing up. I got a lot more involved with the Middle Eastern culture and vibe as an adult, so through my work and things like that. But as a kid, it felt very international. So coming here, I still feel like it's a very international vibe. Even though we live in quite a local part of town, it doesn't feel like very daunting or very scary that we're in like this whole new environment. So I'm kind of enjoying it.
I feel like as well, like local Hong Kong it's not like crazily steeped in tradition that it's so, sometimes like very traditional cultures can be so just different to what you're used to.
Yeah, true.
I feel like it's quite accommodating, and it has a lot of Western influence that I think if you're an expat coming over, it doesn't,
that's
not
very
too
true.
hard of a city to adjust
that's probably why I don't feel very intimidated or nervous, or I feel very at home.
Yeah.
Which is very cool.
Meg, we're going to talk today about training.
Okay.
I think it's something that you and I love a lot. And I think kind of everyone in this team loves a lot. And I want to talk a little bit about like your training history and what you have done up until this point in time. Because, context, you're quite prevalent on social media. Well, at least you have been on social media for a really long time.
Yeah.
I think speaking to you, you kind of like got on the bandwagon pretty early.
Yes.
A frequent poster, like you kind of knew, clearly looking at your page, you knew what to do, even like back in the early days of Instagram. Like, it looks very aesthetic. It looks like there's thought that's gone into it. But
it was intentional.
Looking at your posts, there is like a lot of your posts are to do with training. Like, you're always doing something. Either you're doing something active, or you're pregnant, or you're with Mark and Mason. That's one of those three things. But I would say 99% of it is you're doing some form of like exercise or activity. Fitness, exactly. But when I look at the type of fitness you're doing, like, there's consistency for sure, but it goes from, like, back quite a few years.
Yeah.
Trying to be politically correct here, but like skinny Meg
Yeah.
doing
Tiny.
what looks like she's doing a lot of yoga.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of flexibility, stretching, putting yourself into pretty aggressive positions, holding it and smiling and looking like it's very easy. And then at some point you transition to doing lots of handstands.
Yeah.
So you're upside down a lot. You also are doing a lot of dumbbell overhead squats. Like, a single dumbbell overhead squat, I notice, is a recurring movement that you like to do. Looks good in a photo.
That's hilarious.
And it's a really impressive thing. When I do a dumbbell overhead squat, I look like shit.
It doesn't look like that.
It doesn't look anything like that.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's not good. And then all of a sudden, it almost looks like there is no transition, but suddenly you're, snatching 60, 65, 70 kg. And it's kind of like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But before we like dive into all of that, like, let's talk about what you're actually doing now. Like, what does your training look like right now, and what are you doing with your fitness?
Cool. So I'm currently following the elite program on the process, and I'm training 1 to 2 times a day, up to 5 days a week. So really enjoying CrossFit as a whole. Enjoying weightlifting, enjoying gymnastics. I'm still rehabbing some knee issues that is probably holding me back a little bit in terms of running and jumping and more the cardio side of things. So I'm trying to still enjoy my strength training and my gymnastics, which is kind of what I enjoy doing more anyway.
Right.
But I would love to work on my weaknesses, which I know is running and more the cardio side.
So, I mean,
yeah.
Okay, when you talk about it that way, it sounds like you're just doing
CrossFit
type training, but
100%.
You're also competing in CrossFit.
Yes.
So last year, 2023, was your first year doing in the individual competition at the semifinals. You competed in person, individual. Yeah, that's right, because you did the online semifinals the year before that.
Yeah.
So you competed in the semifinals in the African region.
Yeah. And
then this year, you've just competed with Team CSTL at the Far East Throwdown.
How cool.
Very cool. But what I want to know is, like, what those two experiences, two completely different countries. You've got, competing in Africa, but now you're competing in Asia.
Yeah.
Both of which you weren't living in the country, right? So you can essentially kind of traveled out to these two very foreign places.
Yeah.
And then one as an individual competitor and one as a team competitor. I guess my first question is why team this year and why not individual?
So I've really enjoyed individual last year. It was my first time doing a proper competition, but also the first time I've done anything that competitive where I've enjoyed it. So I've also had a lot of like performance anxieties around competing and things. But last year was the first time I got to fully embrace it, be in the moment, and have this amazing flow state through it. That left me feeling like I want to do this again and again and again. So I really enjoyed individual last year.
Can I just pause you real quick though? Was it your intention last year to try and qualify as an individual and compete in the semifinals?
Yeah. But
so
like, it was like a mini ego goal. Like it was because I wanted to prove to myself I could do it postpartum. So it was like I had done it. I had qualified for it the year before. The year before I got pregnant. So in 2021, I qualified for semifinals, but I didn't get to go because of COVID. So I had to do it online in the European region, and that was shit. It wasn't fun. I had an awful time. I lost every single workout, like the bottom of the pack. It just wasn't fun.
It's also really impressive though, qualifying in that region.
Well, I qualified in Africa, and then they put me into that region.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. So it's like 10 times worse. So like I qualified, I don't know what place in Africa.
Why did that happen?
Because the African semifinal was in person, but because I couldn't physically make it, they just put me into another region.
Oh, yes.
So they should have technically put me to Asia, or, like something that's a little bit more, I would say, fair than putting me straight into a European region. But whatever.
Right.
It was done.
Okay, gotcha. So it was intentionally a goal that you'd worked towards and you
Yeah.
achieved it. Okay.
Yeah, and I achieved it, but I didn't have a good time. So coming back, well, while I was pregnant, I watched the African Semifinal. We had a few friends that were doing it, so we watched them online, and I was like, oh, I'd love to do that. So coming back postpartum and getting back into training, and when things started to click again, I was like, maybe this year, maybe next year, but I would love to be able to do it again and experience it in person and like actually live in that moment, which I got to do last year, and it was insane. I loved it. But since then, I had a lot of speed bumps. So it was a week afterwards, I got like a mini shoulder injury. And a few weeks after that, it progressed to something way worse. So trying to go through that shoulder injury for a few months kind of halted a lot of my progress in the CrossFit, my CrossFit training. And then moving countries, not once, but twice within that year as well. Going from a full-time mom to working full-time, and just having a lot of differences thrown at me in the last year. Beginning of this year, I decided I don't want to put that extra stress on myself and take it too seriously. So I was willing to go through the process, willing to go through the season, and then take it piece by piece and just see where it was going to go. But I ended up getting super sick anyway and not being able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember when you'd first come, you said that
I was just going to enjoy
you were just
it.
going to do it and just have fun.
Yeah. I wasn't going to, I didn't plan to ever go to Africa.
Yes.
Like that wasn't part of even if I qualified, I wasn't planning on going. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to put that on myself.
And then where did the whole team thing come in? Because I mean, we talked recently about, we had myself and Karan and Chris talk about.
I listened to that.
So
it was really good, a really good podcast.
Yeah, I loved it as well.
Yeah.
But we never really talked about like where the whole team thing came about. All we've really talked about was that it was like the universe was trying its absolute best to not let you guys compete.
100%.
But where did the whole idea to go team come from?
I think it was either the first week. It was the first week of the Open. We had to make a decision from the back end. Like Ant had to make a decision as the affiliate manager, like whether we're going to have a team or not.
Yeah.
And so he asked the question, and then Karan messaged me, and he was like, "Would you want to go team?" And I love competing. And in my head, I was like, "Oh, that would be a really fun way to still challenge myself this year, don't have to travel all the way to Africa, and then still kind of have a good time through the season. So have a different kind of outlet of my competitive interests without putting too much pressure on myself." So I said yes straight away. Mark also said yes. So both of us decided would both go join Karan's team, which I'm really glad I said yes, because if you had asked me about 6 months ago, I would have said no. I didn't think team would have been for me. Yeah.
So having done it now, having done both, two very different regions. Because if you were to do individual again, you would technically still have to go back to Africa.
Yes.
I think you couldn't get an exemption, so I think you've done 3 years here, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind now, next year, what's the plan?
I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I enjoyed both of them for different reasons. So I'm like really conflicted because I really enjoyed the community and having the whole of the process community there. I enjoyed having you there as the coach and having kind of that guidance as we went through the weekend as well. I enjoyed supporting other athletes, not only people that we had met there, but also like people from the process. So it felt like we had a team, not just our actual team, but like a whole team environment. It was really, really, inspiring and fun, and it felt different. Whereas individual, I didn't have any of that. So I had no coach. Mark was in Saudi. Mason and my parents were in a completely another town. So I was actually fully by myself for the week leading up to it, the whole competition, and then had to fly home on my own. So I created my own community there. Like I set myself up at semifinals last year to make friends with as many people as I could and try and like bond with people and like have that banter pre-events and in the warm-up area. Like I set myself up to create that because I want it to be a good experience. But I didn't have that going into it, whereas I did this year.
So Back to the
I
question.
don't know.
Can I ask, like,
Yeah.
is there in the team, of course, like your performance is not just a reflection of what you do.
Yeah.
It's a collective performance of 4 individuals.
Yeah.
I know, like, you've been a competitive swimmer.
Yeah.
And you've done individual sports your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was like your first time really doing like a team sport.
Exactly.
So what's that like? Like, is that something you like? Like, do you love the whole idea of, or the fact that, you know, you have to rely on others and it's a team collective. It's not just what you're doing and it's somewhat out of your control. Or, you know, do you like
Such
when
a
the
good question.
responsibility falls entirely on your shoulders and there's no one else to be accountable for? I'm going to blow my nose, by the way. Sorry,
Okay,
everyone. Continue.
go for it. A bit of both. So I like. It was
This is a
probably.
totally unfiltered podcast. It has to be done. That has been brewing for about 10 minutes, by the way. I don't know if
Beautiful.
you can
No,
hear
I couldn't tell.
slightly more clogged every second. Okay, we good.
So what? Okay, wait. Go back to the question.
So yeah, it's you know, like individual, you're fully accountable and
Yeah,
you got full
that's it.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked how in the team you could give off some of that responsibility.
Right.
So it was really nice to have that support and to have someone else step in and help you. I also am. So like my love language is acts of service. So I probably would over try and help everyone else in the team as well. So I'm more likely to push myself to a different kind of point on a team than I would do individually. Because I'd want to help people. Like I want to help everyone. So I did enjoy that. I did enjoy the teamwork. I enjoyed the strategy. I enjoyed the communication. But I didn't feel like I got to express my full fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't feel like, but that's also because of the journey I had to get to semifinals this year. What I do like about how they do program team events is that sometimes it is a collective event and sometimes you do have your little pockets of moments to shine as an individual as well. So I do think if I was more fit going into that event, I would have had my moments to show off my fitness anyway. But I didn't have that because of where I was, not because of the environment of the competition.
Right.
Yeah.
So with everything considered,
Would I do
2025, what are you thinking?
I think I would still like to go individual.
Yeah.
Because I feel like going through what I've been through in the last year, similar for the reason why I did individual last year, is I still want to prove something to myself. So going through what I've been through now, new challenges, it's not pregnancy and postpartum anymore. It's like moving countries and dealing with injuries and mental health issues and going through all of that and being able to like come out the other side. I would like that journey for myself as well. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I want to dig into something you said at the start of this podcast, which was the first year you competed at semifinals. Even though it's online, didn't have a good experience.
Nope.
And you mentioned the word like performance anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you said you changed something so that when you competed the second time the next year, you ended up having the best experience.
Yeah.
What happened? What did you change?
It wasn't an intentional change. It kind of was intentional, the fact that I'm going to go out there and have the best time I can. But because my priorities in life has changed by that point. So the first time I went to semifinals, and even though it was online, my priorities in life then, I didn't have a child. I think I was newly married and my priorities were a little bit more selfish and a little bit more, what do people going to think of me? A little bit more along those lines. But then going through pregnancy, having the most awesome little baby, and my priorities were then more about I'm doing fitness for myself and I'm doing fitness because it feels good and I'm doing fitness because I want to see what I'm capable of. That kind of shifted my intention going into a competition.
So it almost went from like external validation to something that's very internal.
Yeah.
That was by choice and by design.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an intentional thing that you sought to change. It was
no.
something that kind of just came about through having Mason and becoming a mum.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe learning and reflecting on what happened that year that you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. So it wasn't like I put in the work to make that happen. I would like to take ownership of that and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I did. But no, it happened. And then through that and watching other athletes get frustrated or flustered through the process, and I couldn't relate to that anymore. So seeing how other athletes, like obviously their priorities were completely different to mine, and I could relate to how they felt, and I remembered how I felt previously. And I was like, I can't relate to that anymore. I don't feel like that anymore about that. And I think that's helped me a lot. Even now, still in training, working on my weaknesses and things like that, I'm more open to that now because I'm not so worried about looking stupid or feeling vulnerable in that moment.
Yeah, nice. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that about you.
Yeah.
You kind of just embrace everything and
just
you're
do
not never not willing to give something a try, even if it doesn't work out.
But I never used to be like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Instagram, Meg.
Okay.
So would you say that description that I just put out there of like, yogi to handstander to dumbbell overhead squatter to CrossFitter, would you say that's a pretty accurate depiction of what your life? Oh, I guess swimming didn't really appear in there.
No.
Unless I just didn't go back far enough.
No, it wouldn't have.
You are wearing a swimsuit in basically every photo, so maybe that's like the swimming element.
No.
No.
So Instagram, I'm trying to think of the year when I actually started it. I think it was 2014 or 2015. That was around the year. So I stopped swimming when I was like 18. So I had stopped swimming quite a while before Instagram and my social media hobby kind of took off. So for me, when I started Instagram, it was around about the same time I just started in the gym. And I remember following other people on Instagram that used to post about their gym life. And I remember actually saying to one of my best friends at the time, I could do that. Like I could post about my workouts and I could share my workouts and I could create content like that. Like I could do that.
What was the goal though? Was the goal just like a bit of a side tangent? Was it that you saw Instagram as this ability to be like, wow, I can really create a cool profile, create a following, get sponsors?
Yeah.
Were you thinking like that?
I was thinking like that, but without realizing what it could lead to. It was just more like, I can't believe this person has this many likes for just posting what they did in the gym. Yeah. Like, I was like, that looks really easy to do. I want to do that.
Nice.
And I literally would then, like, if you scroll back far enough, there's pictures of my shoes and like my gym outfit and like silly selfie mirror selfies. And like, yeah, if I'm thinking back to when I started fitness like that, it was with the intention to kind of grow a following. But I still wanted to do it in an authentic way. I still wanted to just share my journey and share what I was doing. And then hopefully it resonated with other people and they could also be like, well, I can do that too.
And you were saying that in around 2014 was when you started your kind of like non-sporting but fitness journey. What were you doing?
So what happened, I was at university and I had stopped swimming. I think it was around about 2 years before that. So I stopped swimming because I partially dislocated both my kneecaps. So I got really injured from overtraining in the pool.
How did you do that? Swimming?
Really? A breaststroke kick. Yeah, a breaststroke kick and my kneecaps slid out of tracking. And
both at the same time?
I don't know, but they both were completely out of alignment when I went to go see a doctor.
That's impressive.
Disgusting. So it came down to the fact that I had no functional strength or no functional help outside of the pool.
Right.
So we swam stupid amount and we trained super hard, but we never really paid much attention to the functional stuff that we did.
So did you do, as a part of your swimming,
Yeah.
did you ever do like what they call it, land training, right?
Yeah, they do.
Did you
call it
do like strength and conditioning in the gym?
Not really. We
No.
got told to go to the gym. We got told to do things in the gym, but we had no coach there, no guidance.
Yeah, right.
So I used to go to the gym and I used to run on the treadmill.
Do some med ball twists.
Literally. Do some abs.
Yeah.
Do some shoulder, like rotator cuff exercises. That was it.
Yeah.
And then we'd go to swimming training. So we got told to do things, but we never had the guidance.
Right.
And then that's probably why I got injured. So then 2 years later, by that point, I had given up on my rehab. I had given up on trying to fix my knees. And I went to see a physio. I was studying at university, studying marketing.
Likewise.
Yeah. And I went to go see a physio about like tension headaches I kept getting. And during that first chat or whatever, I was chatting to her about fitness in general and told her about my swimming and why I stopped. And she was like, oh, you could fix that. And I was like, but it's so painful. And she's like, well, yeah, we can like take the steps and we can work out what's happening and we can fix that. And I was like, okay. And she's like, well, what's your goal? Like, what would you like to be able to do fitness wise? And I was like, I would like to be able to walk a kilometer pain-free. Because at that point I was 19, almost 20, and I couldn't walk a kilometer pain-free. And I knew that was wrong. Like, that's not okay. And she was like, okay, well, how about running? Would you like to be able to run? And I was like, man, that felt like such a far like picture in my brain, like to be able to run a kilometer. And she was like, okay, well, give me a year and I'll have you running a 10K.
Oh, cool physio.
Really cool physio. And a year later, so I saw her probably regularly for about 4 months and then set me up with biokineticists and we worked all of it out. A year later, literally, I ran a 10K obstacle course race. And that's when I kind of like got really involved in functional training and enjoying the journey of functional training.
When you say functional training, like, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like going to the gym, doing push-ups, squats, running. I started with the idea of doing pull-ups, just like general body weight strength stuff, the odd weights, but didn't really know what I was doing.
And were you self-guiding this? Were you going with like friends? Were you looking on YouTube?
I had a boyfriend at the time that knew about the gym, and I would just tag along and try and do stuff at the gym.
Nice.
And that was about it. I wanted to run because I could then, and I was like, oh, I get to do this pain-free. Yeah. So I did a lot of running, did a lot of just normal lunges, box jumps, just a lot of plyometric-y, body weighty stuff. And then I kind of...
just trying to piece this all together.
Yeah.
So you work with this physio.
Yeah.
I'm guessing a part of this like physiotherapy is strength training.
Yes.
So you're doing that with...
a biokineticist, actually. So I did like proper work with a bio. I went to a normal gym with the bio, did so many glute bridges, so many hamstring curls, like basically learning how to actually engage and activate my posterior chain.
Yeah, right.
And figured out that my hip
normal
flex...
for swimmers though as well, right?
Well, yeah, because
we
were so... like my hip flexors and my quads and everything was so jacked that I had very little to support that or to offload that. I actually still remember as a kid waking up at night with hip flexor cramps and never thinking like, oh, this is a problem. Like something's... I would just be like, oh yeah, that's painful again. Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So you've rehabbed through this process.
Yeah.
And then is it just that you've now like witnessed and experienced the power of strength training and how that got you to go from basically not being able to walk to running 10K, and you're like, okay, this is fun. This is fun. Like, this is cool. Okay. And so that's what pulled you into the gym.
And that's what I really I enjoyed training again. So it pulled me back into the gym, back into the environment of training and challenging myself. And that's something that I grew up with as a competitive swimmer. So having that kind of routine again and having that kind of staple of I'm going to go to the gym and do this for myself is what I got kind of addicted to and enjoying. And I think I did that for about just over a year until I found calisthenics. And it was around...
How did you find calisthenics?
It was around that time where I was seeing things on Instagram. I was like, told my friend I can do this on Instagram too. So I could see some cool things on Instagram, and then I was a member of a gym in Dubai. They had a calisthenics class, and it was once a week. It was like midday of the week in an evening. And I used to watch the trainer, who we're kind of touching base at the moment still now, but we were pretty good friends at the time through this. I used to watch her do handstands on parallettes. And I was like, that is the craziest thing. I watched her put her hands on the parallettes. I can still picture it now. Put her hands on the parallettes, kick up, stop her body stop the momentum, and then just hold it. And I was like, that's insane. Like, how do you do that? And I decided I was going to try and go to these calisthenics classes, like, once a week, and then try and learn how to do these cool skills. And I still, watching people in that gym and watching people in that environment was so inspiring to me to see what the human body could do. So I had that calisthenics class I used to see. There were a bunch of CrossFitters. They used to train on their own and used to do like handstands and muscle ups. And I was like, this is insane. Like, how can anyone learn to do this? I would spend, my 50 minutes running on the treadmill, just watching all these people do really cool things. And I was like, I really want to be able to do all of that. So I started by going to that calisthenics class, asking people in the gym, how do you kick into a handstand? And I still remember asking this guy, Scott in Dubai, how do you kick up against the wall? And he's like, you just put your hands down and kick your feet against the wall. And I was like, yeah, but how do you do that? Like, what if you fall down? He's like, you won't fall down. And I remember not knowing how to do that as a 21-year-old or 21-year-old. So I can completely empathize with people that are terrified to try handstands now, because I remember that fear of being like, what if my hands just like give away? Because it was an actual fear. So that's what kind of started the little seed of all these people doing these really cool things. I want to be able to do that too.
So, okay.
Yeah.
How do you go from just the gym goer,
Yeah.
right, who's training with your boyfriend and doing a bit of everything, to just doing a class once a week?
Yeah.
Because most people are going to be like, once a week, surely that's not enough exposure to learn how to do these crazy things.
No. So the class was only once a week. I would have done it every day if I could have.
Right.
So they only put that class on once a week. So I went to that class and I took everything I could from that class, and then I obsessively worked on it for the rest of the week. And then
by yourself?
Just by myself. And then I'd go back to that class and learn something more, and then I'd carry on working on it. And that calisthenics class was super fun in the sense that it always was kind of similar. So I kept like retouching on my handstands. I learned skin the cat. I learned strict pull-ups through that class. So I could like touch on those little things and then work on it for the rest of the week.
Nice. Did you have like any goal in particular? Like clearly like handstands was something like you obsessed over, because you're really, you can do loads of cool stuff in your hands now, and you're a really good teacher of it. But obviously, so that is an aspect of calisthenics that clearly like pulled you in. Was there any other aspects of calisthenics that like attracted you to it?
So I really wanted to learn how to handstand.
I'm gonna blow my nose, by the way.
Okay.
Continue.
I really wanted to learn how to handstand. That was number one. Number two, I wanted to be able to do the splits. So that was the inspiring, like I was inspired by people on Instagram.
How far away, honestly speaking, how far away when you started were you from being able to do the splits?
So luckily I'm still friends with all these people so they can vouch for me. I could not touch my toes.
Wow.
So I could not touch my toes in a forward fold to the point where it was uncomfortable.
What about hip extension? So the leg going back, how were you there?
I was far.
Because that's the bit that's really hard for me. If we're talking about a front split, the hamstring part, I feel is not
but your
bad,
quads and your hip flexors.
But my quads and hip flexors are terrible. Like so far off.
So I remember being extremely far away from wanting to do that, from being able to do that when I started stretching and started obsessively stretching for that. But if I remember myself as a kid, I was very flexible as like a young kid.
Yeah.
I became a really still mobile swimmer, but a tight swimmer in terms of hip flexors, hamstrings, my shoulders.
Great shoulders, though.
Great shoulders. Great shoulders. Must be nice. But in terms of hips and things, I was like super tight.
Right.
But I remember as a kid being able to do some crazy weird like scorpion things and get my toes to touch my head, like as a kid.
Oh wow.
So I think genetically maybe I'm pretty flexible person. I just had to like lean into it.
Well, I think when you're doing one sport, especially like swimming,
Yeah.
which is so repetitive in nature,
Yeah.
like we cultivate mobility in the ranges that we're using every day. So if you think swimming, like shoulders are always going to be used because you're pulling it into extension and going out the water, and overhead position is very necessary. But if you think about the legs,
Yeah.
if
just
you're a
going up and
freestyle
down.
swimmer, they're just going up and down. So you're never really having to go beyond that. I guess if you're a breaststroker, then you develop pretty
Different.
good like hip external rotation and abduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just always so interesting
Yeah, it's crazy.
what, how the body retains the things
And
it needs and it lets go of
adapts
the
to
things it
it.
doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I honestly believe, going through everything that I've been through, you can teach your body to do anything. So I honestly believe if you know the program and if you know what to input into your body, you can get it to do anything.
So
I
talk me
honestly
through
believe
your
that.
protocol for going from not being able to touch your toes
Yeah.
to being able to do the front splits. Because there are photos on your Instagram of you doing front
Yeah,
splits.
I eventually got to oversplits. So I could like put my feet on
elevate them.
objects and then like fully sit on
Wow.
the
Can
floor.
you still do that now?
No.
Can you do splits now?
Yes, but not comfortably.
Yeah, it might tear a couple of things, but
No, I don't think it will tear. It just won't be comfortable.
right.
And I can only go one way. So that's the
Interesting.
other problem. So when I started, it took about 7-8 months of like obsessive stretching. And there's like stretching hamstrings, stretching your hip flexors, stretching your glutes, and then
doing it all together.
doing it all together, and then going into that position and stretching that position. There were other things that I really wanted to do in yoga, which was called the King Dancer's pose, which is where you take your foot behind and then you do the splits behind your head.
Also seen that photo.
Yeah. So like that was a goal of mine, and I knew I had to get the splits to do that. Like I really want to do that. So
when you say obsessed over it, like how frequently are we talking? Like you're doing
like
some form of split work?
4 to 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
and is that like
I wouldn't say it's healthy.
Is that like a 10 to 15 minute session? Is that an hour session?
Like an hour, 40 minutes? Yeah. I would not say what I was doing was healthy. And I was also only favoring, I would stretch both sides, but I would favor one side.
Probably the side that was closer to
Right.
getting it.
So if you look at all those photos that you're talking about, they're all the same side.
Left leg in front?
Yeah.
Yeah, thought so.
Yeah. Same side that I would split jerk with. Like it's always that dominant side is always forward, which is not, again, I wouldn't say healthy. So I've got a lot of imbalances now, and I'm pretty sure it's from favoring one side for silly but really fun Instagram photos.
Yeah, interesting. I started a quest once, working with my old coach Kyle, where I said I really wanted to do a straddle, basically like a straddle press to handstand.
Mm-hmm.
I just was like arbitrary goal.
Yeah.
I want it. Like every time the season would end, he'd be like, okay, let's start. And I'd pick some like crazy, because mobility was something I really struggled with.
Yeah.
I started setting like things like I want to be able to dumbbell overhead squat. I want to be able to do like a close grip overhead squat, and I want to be able to straddle press. And then I hadn't really thought about like what's really required to do a straddle press. Is it called a straddle press?
I would just call it a press to handstand, but I know what you're talking about.
From a straddle, right?
When you talk about a straddle press. Yeah.
The thing is, like, I couldn't even press into a handstand in any way, shape, or form. So I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do a straddle, like miles away from that. So we basically, I remember we went, and it's not Kyle's fault, obviously. Like I gave him loads of ideas.
Yeah.
And we basically just tried to start doing like straddle handstands. And it was like, oh my God, it was just a complete mess.
Awesome.
You know, I'm just like slamming my head into walls, like I had zero control.
Yep.
Tried to work on the straddle, and I was just like, I think I did it for like 3 weeks.
Amazing.
And I was like, this is way too, I'm putting in too much work than I'm willing to put in, and I'm seeing
no results.
Not enough progress. I was doing like
in 3 weeks.
I was doing like, yeah, but I'm talking like I was doing like 5 minutes once a week.
Oh my God.
That was my straddle work, and expecting to suddenly like be in the splits. So
I put a lot more work into it.
Yeah.
And I would I would really spend like an hour before my day, like by myself at the beach, stretching and like putting into the work of handstands, and I would kick up for a millisecond and then take a screenshot of that handstand and then post it. So I was like really, really trying to get some really cool content and stuff for Instagram. That was literally my driving factor for cool stuff.
Instagram, like, it'd be so cool to be able to do this.
Yeah, that external validation of like, but also at the same time, it like having an online community was really motivating to me.
Yeah.
So not only the external validation, I was like creating my own community and creating all these online friends that were going through a similar thing, and
So I guess yoga isn't really the right term
No.
because it's not. It looks like you're holding yoga poses, but you're not really. You're doing calisthenics and
stretching
getting into aggressive positions.
Flexibility. Yeah. I then went and did my yoga certification. So I went and did my yoga certification, and after doing that, I realized I enjoyed yoga, but not to the same extent that I'm willing to pursue it as a career. Like it's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I did it for a little bit, but it's not my passion at all.
Yeah.
I enjoy challenging myself a little bit too much.
So where did dumbbell overhead squats come into this?
Right. So it was around about 2015. So I literally everything I've just told you is in the space of about 1 year.
Yeah.
I had some crazy progress at the beginning, but again, that was like my obsessive, addictive personality that just clung on to fitness.
Yeah.
And
actually,
then
before we talk about dumbbell overhead squat, Meg, like what were some of the most impressive things that you could do at the end of your year of calisthenics? So front splits,
right?
Actually, whatever they're called, negative splits. No, when you
over splits.
Over splits. Yeah. Okay, so one. What else could you do?
I could press to handstand. I could hold a handstand. I could do a
For
pike.
how long? More than 1 second?
Yeah, definitely.
What was the longest handstand you could do at that time?
Maybe around about a minute and a half.
So that's a freestand, right?
Freestanding, yeah. And although I had touches of coaches throughout the years, I was very proud of the fact that a lot of that was to do with my own programming and my own training. It took me about 10 months to get a freestanding handstand on my own. And then about 3 months later, I could press to handstand. Wow. So it was a really fun journey.
And you like pretty cool pulling stuff like
so then
levers,
so then by that point as well I could so I worked at a gym in Dubai called Gravity Calisthenics Gym, and they had just opened. They're now much bigger than what they were when I was working at it and it just opened. But we had some criteria for the calisthenics people to move up, so I was like, cool, I want to be able to meet the same criteria. And one of them was like 3 strict muscle ups. We call them muscle ups, but 3 muscle ups in a row, 3 or 4.
Rings or bar?
Either. Oh. So I could do both.
Yeah.
At that point, so I could do 3 to 4 strict ring muscle ups in a row. I could do strict bar muscle ups as well.
And is that bar muscle ups like on your wrist, or were you on
So
full
I
grip?
could do normal grip, but then it was like a chicken wing, and then I could do false grip on the bar and then do them normally.
Yeah.
I could do a single leg front lever. I could do straddle back lever. I had done some calisthenic shows as well, which is kind of fun.
It's a calisthenic show.
It's kind of like you just freestyle and like you versus someone else, and then whoever does the coolest trick wins.
That's pretty cool.
It was really cool.
What were some of your things in your
So I could this is hilarious. I could go from a handstand to a scorpion handstand, so I could get my toes to like touch my forehead.
Wow.
And then I would come back around and I would lower down all the way to the ground without letting my legs come down, all the way to a chin stand. So I'd go from a handstand, lower down like a strict negative handstand push-up, balance on my chin, and then I would come down out of that.
Damn, that's pretty impressive.
It got some good points.
That's very cool. So you won your showdown?
Yeah, but it was really cool. It was against Tracy, who was my first calisthenics coach.
Oh, so... you can't beat the master. That's not okay. Did you beat her?
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
Not okay,
I think so. I'm going to have to ask her how that went. But she's really cool. She's super cool.
So, okay, so in 2015, probably around... No.
So let's say the start of 2014 is when it kind of all started. End of 2015 is kind of when I learned about weights. Yeah, like a year and a half.
So I'm going to talk about my own calisthenics journey now.
Tell me.
Nowhere near as cool as yours. But in fact, I wouldn't even really call it a calisthenics journey. Mm-hmm. But in 2012, Ido Portal came to Hong Kong. And this was before Ido was like big. Mm-hmm. He was running a movement camp once, I think. He'd done one movement camp in Berlin, which is like his big thing.
Yeah.
I think he was either friends or maybe more than friends with one of our clients at the time that Ant was coaching. And she was like, "Oh, this guy, Portal, he's amazing.
He is
He does
amazing.
this." Obviously, I didn't have a clue who he was,
Yeah.
right? I'm not on Instagram as well at the time. In fact, Instagram didn't even exist at this time, I'm pretty sure. But I didn't have him on Facebook. I wasn't really a YouTuber.
Yeah.
So she's like, "This guy, he does this like movement work." I was like, "What's movement work? That sounds really wishy-washy." She's like, "He does this crazy shit on rings," and I was like,
Okay.
"I don't even own a pair of rings." Like,
Yeah.
we're just coaching people in strength and conditioning in personal training gyms. She was like, "I really want you guys to do a session with him and meet him." And me and Ant were like,
Sounds like a
I
clown.
don't even know who this guy is, but yeah, okay, sure. So she basically sets us up with one day. So she books out for us. It's amazing. So grateful that she did this in hindsight. She books out this personal training studio. That's not cheap, by the way. So no one can coach people for a whole day.
That's amazing.
And it's myself and two of my other coaches before we have a gym, right? We're just freelance coaches. And we have Ido Portal, John Sapinoso, who is like his right-hand man, and Odilia Goldschmidt, who's like his right-hand girl, still is like the biggest names in like that world. So it's basically 3-on-4. Or Babs was there as well, 3-on-5. So 5 of us, 3 of them.
That's
basically
hilarious.
like 1-on-1 for like 9 hours with Ido Portal. And so like here's we talk about, he's teaching us all this different stuff, but also like principles and theories and one of the things he said is like, by the end of today, we're going to learn a strict muscle up. And we're like, whoa, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And so there's no rings in this gym. So there's a squat rack that's probably like maybe a foot higher than me.
Oh no.
And he's like, you got to bring rings because he didn't have them. I'm like, how does Ido Portal not have rings? Now I think back, I'm like, how did you not have rings?
No.
So we bought some like really shit Taobao rings. So like fake from China, super skinny, super slippery. And we bring him there. He's like, what the hell are these? He's like disgusted that we bought fake rings. And we also had a pair of plastic ones as well.
Yeah.
We're like, well, that's all we got.
We didn't know.
So we never used chalk at this. We've never used chalk before at this point as well. And this gym didn't allow chalk. So he brings in chalk and he called it sodium bicarbonate.
Oh.
Yeah. He was like very proper about it. Anyway, funny story is I got strict muscle up before Ant did.
No way.
So Ant didn't.
Should I be less surprised?
You should be less surprised actually. He remember we were warming up and he said to me, he's like, Ed, you're not going to get one today. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. It wasn't pretty though. And he said to Ant, like, he also said the same thing to Ant. And I think Ant like tried and failed on the strict muscle up for ages. Brat's one of our other colleagues. He was like really good at calisthenics.
Yeah.
But he talks about handstands and all that kind of stuff. So
cool.
After that, I, with one of my friends, bought Ido's program. So basically it was like he had a straight arm day and a bent arm day. Bent arm strength, straight arm strength. And I set a goal, a 6-month goal of doing a 1-arm chin up on the rings.
That's awesome. Did you get it?
No.
Oh,
That
would have been so impressive.
I stopped after 3 months. I think I really enjoyed the process of doing it.
It's very repetitive.
I just got really bored of it.
It's really repetitive.
Yeah, I got really bored of it. I also set a goal of being able to hold a freestyle handstand hold.
How's that going?
Stopped after 3 months.
Ah.
Oh, now, because of Meg, elite. No, so I set these 2 goals, but I really enjoyed, like, I'm still very grateful to being exposed to that. I then went and did like one of his movement camps in Hong Kong, like it was the next weekend.
That's so cool.
Learned a lot of stuff from him at a very early
Yeah.
stage of my career. So, I moved into CrossFit. Even as a CrossFit gym, we'd been exposed to all these really cool things from Ido Portal. I'd followed his program for 6 months. Tried to get a 1-arm chin. I got to about like 90 degrees of elbow flexion, which I think is pretty good. Like people were saying, like if you stick with it a little bit more, you're gonna get past that breaking point.
Yeah.
But that was also roughly a time where like, I was just coming into CrossFit, just opened up a gym, and I was like, I want to learn how to do like keeping muscle up.
I was just about to say, then you want to keep it
walking. So then I basically like sacked it all off. But yeah, that's my kind of thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say something on all that.
Yeah.
I completely forgot.
So
maybe it'll come back to me.
Ido Portal?
No. Anyway, might come back to me.
Cool. Okay, so
1-arm
we're back to
overhead.
2015, end of the year.
Yes.
Meg's now
So what happened was
doing what?
I just before the end of 2015, I was working as a calisthenics trainer. I was known on Instagram. I can't remember the following or like what my known was, but I was known on Instagram. And my little goal of being a social media kind of influencer was kind of taking off, and I got some cool photo shoots to do and got some cool gigs, and that was kind of all happening. And one of the cool gigs was I got asked to do like a Nike photo shoot. So yeah, I got to do my favorite standing splits pose in Nike, like at the end of this pier with like this beautiful sea behind me, and it was a gorgeous photo. And at that photo shoot, there was another girl who was doing it more from like not a yogi standpoint, but like a fitnesser, and got to know her pretty well through that photo shoot. And she was like, I really want to learn a muscle up. And I was like, sweet, I can teach you a muscle up. Muscle ups are easy. And through that conversation, found out she's a CrossFit coach, and she was struggling to get her first muscle up. And she wanted to learn a little bit more from a calisthenics point of view. At that time, I did not like CrossFit. So the idea...
Why? Why didn't you like CrossFit?
I don't know. I think it was like the people around me didn't like CrossFit, and being in that community of other people not liking it, I just jumped on the bandwagon and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So
but what you would say to people, I didn't like it. What were the words?
What went through my head?
What were the words that would come out when you try and justify you didn't like it?
I didn't like how people dropped weights. I didn't like the noise.
Was the dropping weights part like just because these guys are all egotistical?
Yeah, I thought it was like an ego thing of people wanted everyone to look at them when they dropped the weights. I didn't know or understand enough about weights to know why people were dropping weights.
Yeah.
So I just didn't like that. I felt like it was a really showboaty kind of sport, which is ironic because I obviously wanted to be on Instagram and showboat my own skills, but I didn't like that. And I didn't like the kipping side of things. So coming
you were
from
like a purist.
Yeah. So coming from like a really strict calisthenics background, not even background, I was currently doing that. I didn't like how people were kipping toes to bar or pull-ups, or I thought that was taking away from gymnastics. So I didn't like it. So I was like, sweet, I'll teach you. And she was like, I can teach you anything you want to know about CrossFit. And I was like, nah, it's okay. We'll just do muscle ups. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. But getting to know her, and turned out she was coaching at Metalize. She was working with Justin Aarons and John Britton and all those guys at Metalize. And I would go and hang out with her, and we would do some sort of CrossFit training, I guess, but not really CrossFit because I didn't want to do CrossFit. So we did wall balls and we did some squats every now and then, but we did a lot of muscle up training for her. So we kind of trained each other through it. And that was kind of like my first look into CrossFit was Justin Aarons, John Britton, and Misha.
Which is pretty, like that's like a
pretty high level.
It's a high level.
Yeah.
But it's also pretty like atypical of what people don't like about CrossFit, right?
Yep. I mean, and I didn't really like it.
Really like all those guys, but like very jacked.
Yep. Very aggressive.
Very little t-shirts.
Yes.
Metalize is like, was like playing metal music all the time. Dark, dingy, like strong dudes.
It was dirty. The floor was gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those boys were throwing around big weights at the time as well.
Yeah, they were like ahead of their time.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. So that was my first impression of CrossFit. I didn't really like it. Then I met Mark. So I met Mark like just after I met Misha. So I had met all those Metalized guys, and then I met Mark a few weeks later. He slid into my DMs. And
nice, Mark.
Yeah, good boy.
Good lad.
And we started like chatting online, and the only reason not the only reason, but I entertained it because he was a mutual friend of Misha's. So I was like, okay, well, this is a friend of a friend. And
at this point, you've got like a massive Instagram following.
I think if I think back to the time, I think I had about 80,000 followers.
Oh, fair play, Mark.
Yeah.
He's just dropping a DM into a celebrity's inbox.
Well, he said that he wouldn't follow me. He was like, she has too many followers. So he actually slid into my DMs on Snapchat, which I think is even braver. Like he found my Snapchat and then just started like messaging me on Snapchat.
I was never really a Snapchatter, so
yeah.
I don't. Why is being a Snapchatter more why is that more brave?
Because it's like there's a little bit more like Snapchat, the conversations erase after you close them. Right. So a lot more goes on in a Snapchat conversation.
So you just sending you nudies, basically.
Basically, you could, and it would disappear.
Right.
And if someone was to screenshot it, you get a notification. So it's a little bit more like brave in terms of a conversation to have it on Snapchat than it is
See, I
somewhere.
disagree with that.
Yeah.
I would say that
It's more.
it's way easier.
It's easier.
Because you can do whatever. You
Wimping
can do
out.
something outrageous, and then it's deleted.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, you could deny it ever happened.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got to chatting and eventually started dating. And it was a long distance relationship. He was in Kuwait, and I knew he was a CrossFit coach.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't fully on board with the whole CrossFit idea, but I thought he was a pretty cool guy. Talked him into foam rolling more often because he didn't, and I thought that was crazy. I was an obsessive foam roller.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like bridging this fitness gap a little bit that I had in my head. And a few weeks after we started dating, Mark entered a CrossFit competition as a team of 4. So it was him, a friend, and then 2 girls. We're all coming over from Kuwait to Dubai to do this CrossFit competition. And the morning of so he landed the Thursday night, and then the Friday morning was going to be this competition. And Friday morning, we wake up. He's staying at my house. We wake up, and he's got a message from one of the girls on his team saying she didn't get a visa and couldn't come into Dubai. So Mark looks at me. He's like, "Oh man, we can't do the comp." And I was like, "Oh no." And he's like, "Do you know anyone else that does CrossFit?" And I was like, "No. Like everyone I know that does CrossFit, there's like 3 of them, is already doing this comp. I don't know anyone else." And he's like, "Okay. Well, would you do it?" And I was like, "I don't do CrossFit." Like, but then the little competition, little thing in the back of my head was like, "Oh, that actually would be really fun to do." So I said yes.
Did you know what the events were? Had they released
So
it?
they did. And I had to go to work still that morning. So I was still coaching calisthenics that morning. So I had to miss the first event. And Fern had to do the whole of the ladies section of that workout on her own, which is, she did. She's an absolute legend. The next event was a 1-rep max snatch, which I had never done before.
What did you hit? So you'd never snatched?
Never snatched before.
Never done an empty barbell snatch?
Well, this is so funny. So I was coaching calisthenics that morning, and we had like these little bars. So I knew my first event was going to be a snatch. And we had these little bars that we could like lock into things. So
yeah,
it
like
was
a salmon ladder.
Kind of, yeah. And I was like trying to teach myself how to quickly, I had seen people do it in Metalize. I'd seen people do it, but I hadn't done it. So I was like trying to teach myself. I was like, it's kind of like, I was like trying to figure it out. I knew I had to get it over my head. Like, so Mark's like, "Don't worry. Like, I'm a great coach. I'll teach you." I was like, okay. So he taught me in the warm-up area, went through his little barbell warm-up, and I hit 95 pounds.
That's pretty damn good.
Muscle snatch.
I mean, just muscle snatch 95 pounds. I think that's pretty much like what my snatch was when I started CrossFit in 2014. Not actually kidding.
Yeah, so that was my snatch.
That was definitely my max event squat.
I didn't squat it.
Yeah.
I picked it up and put it over my head.
Yeah.
I don't remember how fast it was, but we won that event. So
Mark probably lifted like 120 or something.
He lifted 125 kilos.
Yeah.
Which was really, really cool. So I didn't know that was cool at the time. Everyone went crazy. And I was like, yeah, that's my boyfriend. I had no idea it was like 275. Like I had no idea that was like a number, like a big deal. I knew it was heavy. It looked heavy, but it didn't comprehend in my head. So that was kind of cool because Mark said to me, if you hit 75 pounds, we'll win the event. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And I hit 95.
So cool.
So we won.
Okay. So at this
comp was so fun. The next event we had like rope climbs, chest to bar pull-ups, all these other cool things, toes to bar. We had walking lunges. We had to do thrusters, like all these new kind of things that I could do that I was like, this is really fun because I enjoy competing. And I didn't realize that I had enjoyed competing this much until I was put back into this competition environment. So it kind of like set off this fire. I did do everything pretty much strict though.
Yeah.
People were like, this girl's batshit crazy doing sets of 5 strict chest to bars. And I was like, okay. I didn't realize it was a thing.
Yeah.
And so many people said to me, if you start training CrossFit and you take this seriously, you're going to be really good. And I was like, oh. And I think again that like mini external validation, wanting to be really good at things, kind of like, again, also fueled my fire and wanted me to like actually do it properly and take it seriously.
Yeah. You wanted to be like, look what I've done.
Look what
Look
I've
what I
done.
can do
Look
in
what I
such a
can
short
do.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So did you?
So I started training CrossFit after that.
And when you say that, like, did you go to a gym? Were you like still figuring things out yourself? Was Mark your coach?
Very good question. If I think back to it, I still carried on training it on my own. So I didn't go to CrossFit classes. I was a member of a gym called Warehouse Gym.
Yeah.
So I was still a member at Warehouse.
Warehouse Warriors. I remember competing against them.
Yeah,
2014.
they're the people that taught me how to kick up into a handstand against the wall. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's 2014.
Yeah.
It was them. Yeah, so they, like, I was still in that environment. They didn't really have CrossFit classes. So I didn't really do CrossFit classes per se. I was just trying to teach myself things. And I'd go hang out again at Meslize and they would teach me a few things. So I got like a lot of personal training from people I knew in the industry without doing classes. And I thought of Instagram and single arm overhead squats and my flexibility separately to what I enjoyed in training. I didn't see how, it's silly for me to think back to, but I didn't see how they related to each other.
So you couldn't see how you could make CrossFit look cool on Instagram.
100%. So I carried on doing the cool looking stuff, but I enjoyed creating that. I enjoyed the mini photographic missions we would go on, and I enjoyed trying to find cool backdrops to like take cool photos, and I enjoyed training for those cool things, and I enjoyed CrossFit separately.
Was a part of you scared that you'd built this huge following doing this certain thing, so people were coming to Meg because she's doing calisthenics and handstands and she's really flexible? Was there a part of you that was worried that if you started posting snatches and muscle ups and handstand walking, not handstand holding, like people, your followers would, I don't know, stop liking you?
A little bit. So it wasn't that I thought people wouldn't like me. I just didn't think the posts would do well. So I wanted the engagement to stay consistent. I wanted the aesthetic look of it. There was no way I could take a 50-kilo barbell with me to the desert and to do a snatch and make it look cool.
So
it would have to be in the gym.
Dumbbell overhead squat the intermediary?
100%.
That was
which is why it made me laugh so much when you're like, dumbbell overhead squats. I was like, oh yeah, because it looks super cool.
So it's kind of CrossFit.
Yeah.
But it's not too CrossFit. It's still in line with like you being.
That's literally it. And that's why I had a good giggle when you brought that up.
I like that we've connected the dots there. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I couldn't post, like, the photos of a gym were really dark and dingy, and I didn't like how that looked on my feed.
So funny, isn't it?
Where so literally my whole feed was curated around like cool looking content, not so much around like my journey as an athlete anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our journeys with Instagram have been so different.
So different.
It's very cool that you, because I mean, you obviously have like, there's a very creative side to you. Like you like photography as well.
Yes.
Like you have an eye for that and a passion for it.
Yes.
Obviously, I don't have any of that. So Instagram.
What? I had no idea.
Instagram for me, it was just like, I don't get this. Like, I don't understand. So I tried to, like, I would try maybe like once a month.
Yeah.
Every 2 months, like put up a post, and people would literally comment like, Ed, what the hell are you posting? And it would be like, I don't know, I'd be on a junk or something. I'd post a photo of like,
oh my God, like the drink.
No, literally be like, not even the drink. It'd be like the side of the boat in the water and be like, junk day. I'd be like, this is not what Instagram's for. Like, you need to, and so I was like, oh God, this is too overwhelming. I'm just not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it wasn't actually till Izzy joined the team that, yeah, Izzy, I was like doing a little bit on social media, but still not. And this is like, sorry, not when she joined the team. It's when I started coaching Izzy. So this would have been 2018, maybe, that she was like, your Instagram's disgraceful. And I was like, yep, I know. She's like, you have a lot to share because you've taught me a lot in a short time. You need to find a way to put this on. I was like, I would love to do that. I just have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to do. Like, I look at things that people post, I'm like, that looks really good. I don't know why it looks really good. I couldn't tell you why it's good, but I would love to. And I would love to like share what I know with the world. So actually, Izzy was the first one that actually taught me the basics of like,
that's amazing.
Okay, your bio, like, I think it says something like, I can't remember what my bio is, but it was cringe.
Lift, eat, repeat.
Something stupid. It wasn't that cringe, but it was like, Oh, I don't know. It was something to do with like sun and like,
Oh,
it's cringe
that
as hell.
sounds good.
Yeah. No,
Sounds
but
like
anyway,
it fitting.
it's very cool that you found that
Yeah.
early on, and actually that Instagram, maybe now you say it's for like, it's for insecure reasons that you became so attached to it, but
Yeah.
hand in hand,
Yeah.
that's kind of what guided your whole fitness journey.
100%.
This like ambition to want to create cool stuff and put cool stuff out
Yeah.
there and make it look aesthetically good was driving you in the gym to do
Cool
and
stuff.
learn cool stuff.
Yeah. And it made me so fussy on technique. So I resonated a lot. Like I remember even when I joined the process, like you post a lot about filming yourself and like watching back what you do. And I can resonate with that a lot because I would film myself and take photos of things constantly of what I was doing. And I learned so much from that, or just putting an image to what it felt like. And I learned so much about my own proprioception and my own technique and my own movement by being so fussy on what it looked like.
Yeah.
But not from a point of like, oh, it has to look a certain way, but more like I wanted the technique to be right before I put it out there.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing. It's like that
Yeah.
feedback loop, right? It's like we get feedback when we're doing something by feel.
Yeah.
But then if you get a second input, which is actually seeing what you look like, and then you marry those two things together, the feel and the look.
Yeah.
Like it's such a great way to accelerate the learning process.
Yeah. And just to put all those pieces together, and I found so much progress when I wanted to do something like that for Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think? I mean, I think we all know what allowed you to step into CrossFit for the very first time and be quite successful with it. But what do you think, like in your own words, looking back on the things that you've done before that allowed you to step into a comp and do a lot of cool things where everyone's like, wow, you can be really good. Like what were the things that you did up until that point that you think allowed you to be successful in CrossFit at a very quick rate?
I think a lot of it comes down to really good understanding of my core.
Yeah.
A really good understanding of my lats, which is actually something that's really hard to teach people unless you work specifically on it. And also like my body positioning. So having a really good body awareness helped a lot. I remember on that comp, we had to do deadlifts at 205 pounds, and I had never done a deadlift before. And I could do them for sets of 4 or 5 reps at 205 pounds.
How did your back look?
I don't know.
Wasn't filming that one.
Didn't film that one. I don't think it was great, but I know that I had a really good. I remember feeling my lats, and I remember like Mark trying to cue me on that. And yeah, like I was able to do so much, I think, because of the body awareness I had built, the lats engagement I had built, and then also just my general trunk structure was really solid.
I would also say like your mobility.
Yeah,
and we somewhat of which, like you said, might be
I've taken that for granted.
Yeah,
definitely.
But then I think also, just being able to put yourself into splits. I mean, that just allows you to access so many more positions.
Yeah.
And in CrossFit you put your body into pretty extreme positions.
Yeah. And my overhead mobility was never something that held me back. Whereas a lot of new people come into CrossFit and they don't have overhead mobility, which I couldn't fathom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the mobility, general trunk strength, and my lats, I'm very grateful for.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this podcast up with a question
for
you. You are a mum.
Yeah.
Little Mason is now, how old's Mason?
He turns 2 on Friday.
Happy birthday on Friday, Mason.
Thank you.
But so the question is, you have the opportunity to breed the next CrossFitter.
Oof.
So the question is, and the answer cannot be, I'm just going to make Mason do CrossFit from a young age. For someone, who you did lots of different things that led you to be successful. And if the goal was to create the next Tia Toomey, or the next Matt Fraser, the next champ, what sports would you put your child into and why?
So I think if we're going to go...
Bear in mind, there's only 7 days in a week. So you can't pick like 50 different things.
What? No
so
way.
Let's say we're going to cap it at 3.
Okay.
3 different sports or activities.
Yeah. Oh, I can give you 2 that I'm going to choose.
Okay, you already know.
Yeah, because like Mark and I have actually spoken about this.
Yeah.
I would love him Mason to be confident with his body in terms of gymnastics.
Yeah.
So for me, gymnastics is one.
And is this like just general gymnastics?
General
so you're doing a bit of
gymnastics.
everything?
Yeah.
Cool.
I also think a high level, I mean, I don't know, I haven't done it, but a high level gymnast, I don't think is also the healthiest for your body either.
I think high level anything.
That's what I mean.
Necessary there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like,
just gymnastics in general.
Gymnastics.
Because that's going to teach body awareness.
Body awareness.
They do a lot of mobility work as well in gymnastics.
Yeah. Keeps you functionally strong.
Trunk work.
Trunk work. I would love him to be able to do handstands with him one day.
Yeah.
So yeah, gymnastics. I also love the kind of camaraderie of rugby. I love the team element of it. I love.
But you know, he could turn out like this.
I know, but he could also turn out like Mark.
He could also, but Mark was a gymnast as well.
He also was a rugby player.
He was a rugby player, but Mark had the gymnastics.
So this is what I'm saying. The two go really well
so
together.
what about rugby do you think would lend him to be, him or her to be a great CrossFitter?
In terms of fitness.
Yeah.
In terms of strength output.
Yeah.
In terms of having a community and a team around you. I also really like that, the team around you, having that support system and doing something as a team, I think is really important and something I didn't really have growing up.
Yeah. Do you think that the team aspect of being a team athlete would serve you being an individual athlete in later life?
Yes, because I think it's important to go through. I think you can learn so much more as a team than you can as an individual.
Yeah.
So I think learning more by going through something as a team can definitely help you as an individual later on in life.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I would also say that when you're only doing team stuff, though, there's a lot of things that are quite challenging. I definitely know when I transitioned into CrossFit, it's the first time I'd ever done individual sport. Everything had always been teams. And there was a lot of challenges that I found unique to maybe like what you experienced being in a team that I'd never dealt with as an individual competitor.
You got no rest.
Yeah, it's not. It's just that, it's just, I guess the things that I found challenging was that in team sports, like it can be like one big moment for someone in your team can really just shift momentum in a game.
Yeah.
Like, in rugby, like your teammate puts in a huge hit and you turn over the ball. It can like just that. It can be something that's totally nothing related to do with you. Yeah. That can totally change a swing of a match or a game.
True. There's the vibe and the energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as well, like feeding off one another. As an individual athlete, I just didn't have that. I was like, who do I feed off now? Like I don't have.
Got to build that up myself somehow.
I have to totally build it up by myself. And it's just something I always really enjoyed with team sports, which is just like the sharing of like wins and losses.
Yeah.
And it's like, you celebrate together and you mourn kind of in the same way together. And it was just like, that was a very powerful thing.
Yeah. The camaraderie.
Yeah. Just created like really unique bonds with the people around you, whether you won or you lost.
Yeah.
And I think not having that in CrossFit was kind of like,
isolating.
Yeah, who do I bond over this loss or this win with? There was a lot of skills that I had to learn to be an individual competitor that didn't come very naturally to me.
Yeah.
Something that did come naturally to me was like the idea of winning and losing.
Yeah.
Like what I see a lot in adults who come to CrossFit and then find themselves in the competitive space, they really struggle with like the whole idea of winning and losing.
Yeah.
And it's like when they lose or something doesn't go their way, it's like the whole world is ending. And it's like, that's something I think, we take for granted when you play sports as a kid. Then it's like, you develop tools to know how to handle wins and how to handle losses. And it's just like,
I've already visualized that, like trying to how to have that conversation with Mason one day.
Yeah.
And like how to be okay with losing. Like I've already started all thinking about all of that, knowing that I'm going to have to go through that one day with him.
I've thought about that already. Even
it's a really tough one.
Child.
It's really tough to think about how you're going to teach someone that, we want to win, but it's okay to lose.
Yeah, I think the way that I want to, if I'm ever fortunate enough to have a child, the way that I want to have a conversation, or I guess like the way that I want to expose them to the idea of like winning and losing is actually like to try and not make it about winning and losing.
100%.
And actually to have it.
That's awesome.
To make it around like effort and things within your control, and actually like the result is
not the focus,
not the thing.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. And I want to have conversations around that, and it's going to be hard because I'm a very competitive person and I love winning.
Yeah.
right? I'll turn anything into a competition
Same.
if I can. And, you know, I also know that I need to be leading by example. And this is something I think about a lot now, but
Yeah.
still, like, if me and Cammy go play tennis, like, I want to beat her.
100%.
And it's really enjoyable winning. And I need to be aware of that.
Does she win sometimes?
No.
Oh, man.
No, she doesn't. Sometimes I give her a little point or
Mm.
something here and there.
Oh,
Yeah. But then I'll make
that's
sure,
nice
like,
of you.
yeah, it is nice of me. But I'll make sure that
She knows
authority is stamped to the next point.
She knows it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's how I want to go about it, because, you know, for me in sport growing up, I didn't have that. It was always about winning.
Yeah.
It was about passing the exams. It's not just my mum and dad at all. It's like
You put it
everyone.
on,
That's a culture that you grow up in, and that's what your coaches are saying, and then that's what everyone's saying. If you don't do well, you don't get selected. You don't get the university that you want to go to. So like a lot of it is built around the result,
the winning.
So it is going to be a challenge to like
Try
the result
and
is still
break
important.
that cycle.
The result is still important, but to make sure there's not too much precedence just placed on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what sports would you choose?
Gymnastics for sure.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so. I wish I did gymnastics as a kid.
Me too.
But I think like tumbling, body awareness, like mobility. Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing.
Can we join our kids for gymnastics?
Well, I would 100% join.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So I think gymnastics for sure. I think it's a very well-rounded thing to do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pick rugby.
No?
No, I love the team aspect of rugby.
Yeah.
I really love the team aspect of rugby. I think rugby really teaches you to like be able to handle like hard things.
That's
like
also what I was
the
going to say, to be physically be challenged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I think that is a pro that would come from do something like rugby, and I love the team aspect, the team element. I guess it's like I'll like play devil's advocate to yours and say, okay, if the goal was really just to get
better at CrossFit.
a better like the CrossFitter, like does team sports help? Like I personally would 100% put my kids into team sports because I think it's a great thing for life in general.
Yeah.
But if the goal was just to breed the next champ, I don't know. Maybe it would.
No, you're right.
But I think even as an individual, you still have a team around you. It's very different though. Like the team is a support network off the field or off the court, or whatever it is you're doing. But when you're out there, it's just you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What else would I do? So let me think. Let's think about what gymnastics is exposing a child to. It's body awareness.
Yeah.
It's mobility.
Yes.
It's relative strength, right? Because it's your body weight, which I think is a very good starting place. What it's not really doing from an energy system training standpoint, like it's not really building an aerobic system.
Yeah.
It's very like fast and explosive in most cases. It can be like enduring, but it's muscle endurance. So I think gymnastics is not going to give the kid the energy system capabilities that would be needed to be a good CrossFitter. So the question is like, what would you choose to give your kid that? I didn't. Wrestling is not a thing where I grew up. It just didn't exist. So wrestling is something I've become aware of basically since doing CrossFit and hanging out with way more Americans, because they're all like, "Oh, we do wrestling in school," and a lot of great CrossFitters have wrestling backgrounds.
Wow.
And I think wrestling again is relative strength again.
Yeah.
But I would say like there's a lot of isometrics, a lot of grip strength. And you need really good body awareness and mobility.
Yeah.
And there's like the robustness that wrestling teaches you
Yeah.
that rugby probably does.
Yes.
But still, from an energy system standpoint, I think Twazon did wrestling at school.
That makes so much sense.
Makes sense in some ways, but he's also really soft. So he didn't get that aspect. But I could see like the mobility, and the powerful and like the stature. He's like, I could see how I could picture him in a wrestling suit.
Can you just imagine him in a fight?
No, absolutely not. He's
like a chihuahua on the end of one of those little toys that just won't let go.
He's just, he's too nice. He's too nice of a man. There's a compliment. There's a compliment as to why we couldn't see him in a fight. So wrestling, I think, would be in a way similar to gymnastics, but I think it would give like the shorter, like the more like non-sustainable energy system stuff. So like sub 3 minutes, be powerful, be aggressive, be really strong, and be really mobile. So there still has to be something that's going to expose them to like the middle to longer energy system stuff.
I've got one to throw in there. What about like triathlons?
Yeah, I was just thinking triathlons.
Because as soon as you started talking about energy systems, I was like,
I think something like that would be really cool, because you get triathlons is pretty cool because you've got three
Three different
modalities.
yeah.
It's long.
Mm-hmm.
So you're developing skill sets of swimming, biking, and running's obviously super important.
Yeah.
I think if you had a kid who was doing triathlons on a Monday, they're doing gymnastics on a Wednesday, they're wrestling on a Friday.
Dream.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously the only thing we haven't addressed is like weightlifting. But I'm confident
they could pick that
that
up.
they would pick it up.
Yeah.
Because they'd have the strength, the grit from
Yeah.
wrestling, they have the mobility and body awareness through gymnastics.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing with gymnastics that's not good is that kids generally develop, like, they have weak legs with the gymnastics.
Very
They're
true.
very upper body biased.
Yeah.
So I think wrestling would kind of add that element to it as well.
And the long distance cycling in the triathlon.
Yeah,
There
for
we go.
sure. Okay, there we go.
It's quite a good all-rounder.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. All right, Meg. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I actually learned a lot about you today.
Yeah.
I thought I knew quite a lot about your history, but I think hearing the details of like the
Why
phases
things
of
happened.
life, and actually what I found interesting was like the link to Instagram and how that was such a vehicle for so much of your fitness growth. And totally makes sense. Look at you as an athlete now, and the things that you can do. You can see the bits and bobs from your training history and how it's all like contributing to where you are now. Very cool. Thank you for joining.
I learned a lot about myself too.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah. Hadn't really thought, I hadn't put all those Instagram puzzle pieces together like out loud. Like I knew that that's where a lot of it came from, but to think of why overhead squats were a thing. Now I know why.
There you go. Until next time, Meg. Thank you.
Until next time. Thank you. Thanks for having me.